I'm going to tell you about the top 30 things that Apple announced at WWDC today. And yes, I know 30 is a big list, but they announced a lot of stuff. Don't blame me. Let's get into it. Don't forget to subscribe before you do anything else. And at the end of this video, please like and comment below. Today, Apple announced all their latest software updates for their various devices, including the iPhone and the iPad and the Apple TV and the Apple Watch, and a big news about macOS and what's happening with Macs going forward. Starting with the iPhone. So Apple announced iOS 14, and iOS 14 made some big changes to the way the iPhone and the iPad looks. The first thing they started to talk about was widgets. Widgets allow you to put stuff like the weather or your photos onto the home screen, and Apple have beautifully redesigned them. Now the only thing with this is this reminds me very much of Windows Phone. I don't know how many of you ever saw Windows Phone or had a Windows Phone, but Windows Phone had these things called live tiles, and they allowed you to have the app icons as well as widgets side by side in a grid, hence the name tiles. This is very similar to what Apple have done with iOS 14, and I just feel like looking at this, we're looking at Windows Phone. Nevertheless, Windows Phone had a great idea with the live tiles, and this is a huge step forward in the interface for iOS. Being able to see more information in one place is a fantastic feature. On top of that, are you fed up with all those pages and pages of disorganized apps, or maybe you're one of those people that likes to organize your apps? That's a lot of hassle. If you don't organize it, it's confusing, you don't know what anything is. Apple have sorted that out. They've now got an app library which will sort through all your stuff automatically, and you can hide the home screens. So no more scrolling through pages and pages of apps. You can just have your main app and everything else can be accessed through the app library. So that's a huge improvement in the interface and ease of use of iOS, and it makes it look a lot more organized as well. How about picture in picture? Maybe you're watching a video on YouTube and you don't want to exit it totally. Well, with iOS 14 on the iPhone, you can get picture in picture. This already exists on the iPad in iOS 13, but with iOS 14, it will be on the iPhone as well. And don't you hate it when you get a phone call and the whole screen is taken over by the notification? Sometimes you don't want to answer it, but you don't want to decline it. It's ugly. It's not very Apple. So Apple have changed how phone calls and incoming notifications appear, and now they just take a tiny bit of space at the top of the screen and you can ignore it or you can accept it, a lot like it is on Android. What about Siri? Siri is going to be improved. It's got a new interface. It's able now to show you at the bottom corner of the screen your notes and reminders that you set, and it can translate up to 11 languages offline without. This channel is called Tech in the Car, so let's talk about Tech in the Car. CarPlay has been updated with wallpapers and the ability to put apps into categories, which will make it a lot more organized. And on top of that, Apple Key is something which right now will be coming to BMW with the new 5 series. And it's kind of ironic because it's existed in its current form with Android for BMW cars for a while now, but it wouldn't work with Apple. Apple are bringing it across, and that's great to see. And in an Apple way, they've added a feature to it which isn't existent on Android right now, which is the ability to share your keys. So you can share your key with a friend or family member. You can even set restrictions if you've got a child you don't want to drive after a certain time, and you can take away that key afterwards. So it's a really easy way of sharing your key, and because it's in the iPhone secure enclave, it means that should you ever lose your phone, you can simply deactivate it through iCloud. So really secure, very clever way of doing keys, and hopefully it will come to other cars as well soon. I don't know about you, but I've often gone up, parked my car and seen that I need to download an app to pay for the parking, and then I've had to download the app, sign in, create an account. It's been a lot of hassle for an app that I don't use very often. Well, Apple have now got something called App Clips in iOS 14, which will let you download just enough of the app to do what you need to do, like pay for your parking. And signing in with Apple means you don't need to go through the whole sign up process as well. So a really clever idea to make things a bit less hectic when you want to download something quickly without having to get the whole app. There are also iMessage improvements, new emojis, and threaded and pinned conversations, so the important people in your life can stay at the top of the page when it comes to messages. Those are the big changes coming to iPhone. What about the AirPods? I have some AirPods Pro. Well, with all AirPods, Apple will automatically now switch between devices. So if you move from your iPhone to your iPad or to your Mac, you no longer have to connect in the settings. It will do it automatically. And if a phone call comes in, it will automatically swap back to your phone away from your Mac or your iPad. That's really cool. And with the Pro version, there's going to be spatial audio, essentially surround sound using the AirPods Pro. That's going to be really cool when watching movies. So that's the AirPods, some cool updates coming to them as well. iPadOS 14 is getting all the same stuff the iPhone is, but it's also getting a few extra things. Universal Search will allow you to search your iPad like you would your Mac, and that's a really cool feature. And also on top of that, also coming to the iPad, handwriting recognition through something called Scribble, which is what Apple are calling it, which will let you handwrite into any text field and it will automatically change it into typed text. Which means if you like writing with the Apple Pencil, you can now do that and turn it straight into text. The Apple Watch has been all about health and it's been a massive focus for Apple. So it makes sense with the new version of watchOS, watchOS 7, that health will be taken into consideration even more. And with the new version of watchOS, you're going to get sleep tracking finally, and Apple is going to tell you how well you've been sleeping and give you notifications about your sleep patterns. And on top of that, it's going to know when you're washing your hands and give you a countdown to 20 seconds and a haptic feedback and a noise to let you know when you're done. So in these times where hand washing is super important, Apple are going to build it into the Apple Watch. A really thoughtful, health conscious thing for Apple to do. And then there's watch faces. You'll be able to share watch faces through various websites and apps with friends, and they can just download them straight away. So the Apple Watch continues to be refined and give you more access to features which are health conscious, including knowing when you're washing your hands. With the new version of Apple TV OS, Apple are taking HomeKit and Home Control to the next level. They're going to add the ability to access your cameras on your Apple TV so you can see full screen as well as pop-up notifications, the ability to set up activity zones which allow you to only be alerted when something happens in an area you care about. They're going to add picture-in-picture, and the HomePod will let you know when somebody rings your doorbell, something which Google Nest has been doing with the Nest Hello Video doorbell and the Google Home speakers for over a year now, but Apple are bringing it to the HomePod. Don't know yet what doorbells will work with it, we'll have to wait and see, but it's coming. And of course, what happens if you want to listen to third-party music on the HomePod? Right now you can't, but coming soon, third-party music services will be available on HomePod. So that's a big improvement as well to what the HomePod gives you, as well as Siri improvements which will be happening across the board with Apple's devices and software. Undoubtedly, the really big announcement was about macOS. macOS version 11, called Big Sur, is going to be a huge change for the Mac. First of all, there's going to be a huge redesign. It's going to look more like the iPad and the iPhone. There's going to be a consistent design language across, which is an improvement because macOS looked a bit uneven, like it wasn't really sure what it was meant to be doing. So that's a great step forward in its aesthetics and its design. The next thing, which is huge, is it's going to be that Apple are transferring from Intel processors to their own Apple Silicon chips. This is a big deal. It means that Apple will be able to get more performance and have smaller computers, smaller Macs, smaller iMacs, and just do things which are not possible right now thanks to Intel's limitations. Apple have announced that the first Macs working on their own silicon, their own chips, will be coming at the end of this year. But Tim Cook also mentioned there will be more Intel Macs coming as well this year. So we're looking at some new Intel Macs as well as the first Apple Silicon based Macs this year as well. So it's a big year for Macs. We expect lots of interesting things coming later on in the year in regard to Mac computers. You might be wondering, what about existing software? Will it work on these new Apple powered Macs? Absolutely it will do. Apple spent a great deal of time showing off how existing software will work. And of course, because the new version of macOS will be running on the same hardware that the iPad and iPhone run on, all of the existing apps on iPhone and iPad will run natively on Mac. So you'll have a huge ecosystem such as Final Cut Pro, which I use for editing this video, that's already running on the new version of Mac on Apple Silicon, and there will be Photoshop and loads of other apps which will run natively thanks to the hardware that Apple have put in on the software side. So really exciting times for Macs. Let's see what the rest of the year brings. That's your roundup of WWDC. the big changes on iPhone, iPad, Apple TV, HomePod, AirPods, and the huge changes coming to Macs. Stay tuned for more on these developments on Tech in the Car. I'll bring you the latest, and hopefully I have some beta software to show you as well soon. If you like this video, please leave a comment, please like and subscribe. It helps me tremendously to have your support and know what you like and what you want to see. I really hope you enjoyed this video. See you in the next one. Thank you.